Tesla was recently kicked out of the S&P 500 Emerging Sector Index, which left a lot of people, including myself, wondering why such a prominent brand in energy and sustainability would not be included. It is because ESG is, after all, an acronym for environmental, social, and governance. This and everything about it will be explained in this video, so make sure to stay tuned until the end. In terms of ESG, we all know that environment must be an important factor. However, ExxonMobil is actually in the top 10 highest ESG scores among the top companies on the list. This is a company known for environmental disasters like the Exxon Valdez oil spill in Alaska, which resulted in 10 million gallons of oil exploding into the bay. And this disaster is considered one of the largest environmental catastrophes in the history of the United States. The Valdez oil spill accounts for one of the worst oil spills in American history, bringing images of blackened and dying beaches, as well as outrage and betrayal. And it seems that the response to the spill was both slow and insufficient. While it is fair to say that it was a very long time ago, most recent data I could find shows that ExxonMobil was responsible for more than 200 oil chemical spills and drilling fluid spills in 2020 alone. Additionally, 2020 was a low year, and the year before, 2019, was nearly twice as low. Quite literally, hundreds of chemicals and oil spills are caused each year by a company that tops the ESG rankings? How is this possible? Who determines these stats, and can we trust them? After doing some research, what I discovered is terrifying. It is not uncommon for conspiracy theories to emerge when it comes to such things. We're talking about some of the world's largest and most powerful companies here. What I am trying to do, however, is just give some facts to show how large conflicts of interests are unavoidable within the current system, which compromises the integrity of the system. After we go through the facts, we can focus on my opinions. Let's just stay clear of the political aspect of ESG, even though it is important. For this video, let's keep it simple. In other words, we need to examine who is responsible for assigning the ESG score to determine whether or not they are as impartial as they assert themselves to be. From Bloomberg to Moody's to Sustainalytics, there are many companies responsible for calculating ESG scores, but one of the largest and most prevalent is the S&P 500 Global ESG score. Therefore, you have a variety of choices as to the style of score you want to listen to, yet they all have one very critical aspect in common. Let's look at the specifics for the S&P Global Inc. These are the ones who own the S&P Global ESG score, but this logic also applies to all of them, not just S&P. When we can look at S&P Global.Inc. When we look at S&P Global Inc., they are almost entirely owned by institutional investors, and the usual suspects are among the top owners. Despite their size and financial weight, Vanguard, State Street, and BlackRock are still on top because they're considered the big three. Further, asset management companies account for the rest of the list. Do you think it matters if they are owned by some of the biggest corporations on Earth? Watch on to find out why. We all know that corporations are beholden to their shareholders in the majority of cases. Therefore, they must act in a way that adds value to their shareholders. So as we mentioned a while ago, Vanguard, State Street, and BlackRock are the three largest shareholders of S&P Global. Now, here's where things get a little complicated. Again, these are just facts, not my opinions. Since the Paris Agreement, financial data shows that the largest three owners of S&P Global, BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street, have continued to grow billion-dollar stakes in some of the most carbon-intensive companies, said in an article from The Guardian. As stated in the same article, these three firms oversee investments in fossil fuels worth $300 billion and have increased those investments over time. Taking a look at how much money each company contributes to climate-related movements is also useful. This information from The Guardian indicates that between 2015 and 2019, BlackRock and Vanguard voted against over 80% of climate-related shareholder motions filed at fossil fuel companies. The opposition to climate-related motions is not malicious. I'm not saying there is. Their business is money-making, but that's just one more crumb that points us towards the truth. Now, let's connect the dots. In the case of the ESG scores, they are created and awarded by companies such as S&P Global, which is almost entirely owned by institutional investors. The responsibility for corporate citizenry falls onto publicly held companies. And a large number of institutional investors, like the Big Three, have a very large stake in fossil fuel companies. So even with that bare-bones limited understanding of the current system, we can see how there's a conflict of interest by having the referee. The oil industry plays a major role in this case, with S&P Global having direct ties to a particular player. This is simply the way the system is set up. As a result, we have a sort of best-case scenario in which S&P Global does its best to ignore its financial ties and give us an accurate score. However, there will always be a conflict of interest, no matter how pure and good your intentions are. This is like a ref who is currently reffing for a team he is betting his house on. It seems that at least in part, Elon Musk believes that even though the referee might have the best intentions, he can't act as the impartial third party to do the job well. In the tweet he sent out after Tesla has been kicked off from the S&P ESG list, Elon Musk tweeted, "Exxon is rated top 10 best in the world for environmental, social, and governance by S&P 500, while Tesla doesn't make the list? ESG is a scam. It's been weaponized by phony social justice warriors." Although I partially concur with his perspective in that tweet, I'm not convinced we should bog ourselves down in the weeds. From a zoomed-out view, as we did earlier, it is clear that the ESG score is associated with success at fossil fuel companies. As long as there is no significant change, things will remain the same. Tesla's failure to make the S&P indices list is almost comical because of what the head of the index said. Quote, "A few of the factors contributing to its 2021 S&P DJI ESG score were a decline in criteria level scores related to Tesla's lack of low-carbon strategy." This is another one of those things that you just have to laugh about. But Tesla has, in my opinion, contributed more to the transition to sustainable energy and renewable energy in the transportation industry than any other company. Period. The success they've had with electric vehicles, which were once deemed impossible to profit from, has changed the entire trajectory of the industry. Therefore, they think Tesla can't compete with Exxon, one of the biggest fossil fuel producers, because it doesn't have a low carbon strategy? It has been and always will be Tesla's core strategy to accelerate the world's transition to renewable energy. There is an almost surreal feeling when this happens in real life, as a major oil company is ranked higher than Tesla while it gets the axe on the ESG list. It brings to light what is going on behind the scenes. The ESG score, I think, is at least partly a game in which companies jump through meaningless hoops to prove that they are the good guys. The goal is to give investors the impression that the company is environmentally, socially, and ethically responsible, though nothing could be further from the truth. Let's think it out loud for a few moments. While I'm not saying this is what's happening, I think it's easy to imagine why it would be extremely useful for giant companies to have some sort of arbitrary certification that they might use to push their agenda. One where you are rewarded if you follow our rules, but punished if you don't. To put it in a hypothetical context, that would be a useful tool for those in authority. Regardless of what a rating or score might look like, it is only as trustworthy as the agency that generated it. I think that in this case, very little research is needed to show that our current ESG system has got some major problems. What are your thoughts on this? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe with post notifications so you don't miss out on Tesla Era.